The illusion of control in a fractured system vanishes the moment the wrong line rings. Another night, erasing history. The chemical bleach burns your lungs, but it pays the heavy toll. Every stain tells a story. Your job is to make sure nobody ever reads it. The current employer pays well for absolute silence. You are the ultimate eraser of mistakes. Routine breeds complacency. But in this underworld, complacency guarantees a permanent, one-way ticket offline. A secure line that nobody should have. The vibration feels like a kinetic impact point. You stare at the encrypted number. Every instinct screams at you to drop the device immediately. Answering is a violation of protocol, but ignoring it might initiate an immediate self-destruct sequence. The voice on the other end is cold steel. It belongs to the rival architect of chaos. The enemy knows your location. They know exactly what you are currently trying to erase. 10 times the usual rate to switch sides. 10 times the rate to betray your master. Decline the offer, and they promise an instant structural failure. The ultimate one-way trip into darkness. The crew remains blind to the shifting board. They keep working, ignorant of the looming shadow. Loyalty is just a transaction waiting for a better counteroffer. Survival requires pure, cold calculus. You must maintain the illusion of normalcy. Any sudden movement might trigger the unseen watcher above. The chemical liquid flows like dark silk. You are trapped between two unstoppable biological grinding machines. Every drop seals the fate of the fallen shadows. Every drop buys you a crucial second. The math is terrifyingly simple. Your current employer cannot protect you from a bullet already chambered. The faint click of a safety mechanism echoes in your skull. A phantom auditory hallucination entirely. The deadline is rapidly expiring. You must manually close the final door before the lights go out. The flame dances, a tiny sun in the endless void. A single spark alters the entire equation. Dropping this fire seals the ultimate contract. There is no turning back once the thermal reaction begins. Time compresses. Every microsecond feels like an eternity trapped inside a decaying metallic cage. The crew operates in complete darkness. They are acceptable losses in a game they never understood. Not yet. The board must be set perfectly before you initiate the final structural collapse. You play the part. A mindless gear grinding away the physical remnants of a failed operation. Evidence dissolves into nothingness. But the memory of the fallen shadows stains the mind permanently. The toxic air provides a perfect excuse to seek cover. Every movement is pure tactical geometry. The overwatch is adjusting. The unseen hunter refuses to lose the primary target in the shadows. The rival architect is waiting for a confirmation. A single text message dictates your survival probability. You send a solitary character, an encrypted nod acknowledging the massive shift in underground power dynamics. The signal cuts through the freezing night. The contract is sealed. Loyalty has been officially purchased. No traces left behind. The ghost machine erases its own digital footprints before initiating the purge. Fear evaporates. It is replaced by the hollow, freezing certainty of an impending massive structural failure. They expect you to finish the mundane task. They have no idea the objective has drastically changed. The heavy metal rests against your hip. A silent promise of kinetic force ready to rapidly deploy. Steel is the only absolute truth in this fractured system. Everything else is just a temporary negotiation. You calculate the exact distance to the primary exit. The mental blueprint is strictly locked and loaded. The trap is physically set. All that remains is the inevitable delivery of the massive thermal shock. You stand on the precipice of betrayal. The impending chaotic disruption is mathematically guaranteed to occur. The contract is physically signed in fire. The old allegiance turns to ash instantly. Gravity dictates the inevitable. A massive thermal reaction replaces the suffocating frozen silence entirely. The beast is fully unleashed. It cleanses the concrete, but devours everything else in its trajectory. Confusion always strikes the ignorant first. They cannot comprehend the sudden, chaotic architectural shift. The ultimate tool of negotiation is presented. The calculus of survival demands immediate kinetic deployment. The Overwatch reacts to the sudden thermal spike. A blind kinetic strike misses the primary target completely. Collateral damage is a mathematical certainty. The expendable pawns are swept off the board ruthlessly. The physical environment shatters under immense pressure. Every broken piece reflects a newly fractured allegiance. Visibility drops to zero. You navigate the chaotic maze using pure, unadulterated predatory instinct. An unexpected variable enters the chaotic equation. A high-value package delivered directly into the blazing inferno. The new target locks firmly into the visual sights. The decision to silence him is entirely automated. A silent, high-velocity kinetic delivery. The ultimate permanent solution to a sudden logistical underground problem. The secure line is disconnected permanently. Another shadow falls seamlessly into the burning, toxic abyss. The mysterious prize remains completely intact. In this underworld, cold hardware always outlives the biological couriers. Securing the asset guarantees your new operational position. The physical leverage is unexpectedly and brutally acquired. The Overwatch is completely blinded by the thermal chaos. The hunter temporarily loses his critical mechanical advantage. The primary exit vector is heavily compromised. Pure tactical geometry must dictate the next explosive kinetic push. Silent movements heavily dictate survival. Every single step must be meticulously calculated and remain completely invisible. A phantom auditory signal rapidly deploys. Deception remains the ultimate tool to manipulate the unseen Overwatch threat. The Overwatch fully commits to the acoustic illusion. You violently break the static line and initiate the extraction. The transition from fire to freezing rain is physically jarring. The atmosphere remains equally suffocating and lethal. Securing the package is only the first phase. Extraction requires navigating a maze of unpredictable, violent variables. The storm attempts to wash the sins away, but the underground stains are entirely permanent and unforgiving. The auditory anomaly cuts through the storm. The current employer always deploys the secondary mechanical cleanup crew. The reinforcements arrive on schedule. Their mechanical mandate is to permanently silence any remaining biological loose ends. You become a phantom in the freezing dark. Survival demands absolute, terrifying stillness in the hostile environment. The harsh light searches relentlessly for anomalies. To be illuminated is to instantly invite a kinetic strike. The sweeping vectors are highly professional. They search for any lingering structural flaws in the operational timeline. The mathematical probability of peaceful extraction drops to absolute zero. You must initiate a preemptive mechanical shutdown. A microscopic miscalculation in the environment. The unseen stain permanently betrays your hidden, highly vulnerable tactical position. Hesitation is entirely lethal. You forcefully introduce a sudden, overwhelming structural failure into the hostile operational equation. The golden currency of the underground economy is spent rapidly. Each metallic sound guarantees a permanent silence. The first variable is forcefully removed. The kinetic feedback loop is instantly initiated and cannot be stopped. The enemy immediately returns fire. The environment shatters under the immense pressure of rapid kinetic data exchanges. The acquired asset instantly becomes a vital tactical shield. Physical hardware protects the fragile biological operating system. The physical toll is visibly recorded on the metal. The underlying high-value contents remain heavily insulated and secure. You aggressively counter the blinding light. Absolute precision is heavily required to systematically dismantle the secondary threat. The mechanical threat is permanently neutralized. The freezing loading dock descends back into relative, highly tense silence. The immediate tactical danger passes, but the overarching strategic nightmare is violently broadcasting directly into your ear. The rival architect acknowledges the violent restructuring. The extraction vehicle is heavily secured, but the destination remains unknown. The extraction vehicle is a temporary sanctuary, but every mechanical beast is a potential trap waiting to spring. You clear the driver's seat ruthlessly. The previous operator is permanently relieved of his designated driving duties. The mechanical heart hums with raw power, a solitary vessel navigating the chaotic underground currents. The new asset sits heavily beside you. Its true kinetic value remains locked behind cold titanium. You leave the burning past behind. The rearview mirror only reflects massive structural failures and ashes. The rival architect transmits new coordinates. The voice is entirely devoid of human empathy or warmth. Trust is an extinct concept. You drive toward a highly volatile rendezvous with weapons completely hot. The destruction is mathematically complete. The old system is burning down to its foundational concrete roots. The urban landscape is a desolate grid. You navigate the invisible borders, dividing hostile underground territories. The payload demands immediate delivery, but every shadow feels like an impending kinetic strike waiting to happen. The previous courier failed his delivery mandate. You must fiercely ensure your own operational timeline holds. The parameters of the deal violently shift. The architect manipulates the board while you are driving blindly. The digital map betrays your trajectory. The new destination is heavily saturated with unknown hostile variables. A sudden change in operational vector. The current employer is actively attempting to intercept your transit. The rearview mirror confirms your deepest paranoia. A hostile mechanical entity is rapidly approaching your 6. Flight replaces stealth. You forcefully inject massive kinetic energy into the chaotic, high-speed evasion protocol. The hunter is mathematically locked onto your thermal signature. The pursuit is entirely relentless and highly professional. You secure the primary kinetic argument. Evasion is only a temporary delay to the inevitable violent exchange. You forcefully break the linear path. The narrow concrete canyon heavily restricts their mechanical pursuit vectors. The engine dies. You wait in absolute darkness, fully prepared to forcefully introduce massive structural failure. Absolute silence is a heavy weapon. It forces the enemy to make the first chaotic, fatal mistake. The hunter slowly enters the fatal funnel. They rely entirely on superior mechanical hardware and numbers. Light betrays position in the dark grid. Every illuminated drop of water is a mathematical warning sign. You calculate the exact kinetic vector. Disabling their mobility is the primary requirement for successful extraction. The silent delivery violently shatters their momentum. The mechanical beast instantly loses its physical foundation. A sudden catastrophic mechanical failure halts the pursuit. The hunters are forcefully grounded in the freezing rain. Panic forcefully overrides their tactical training. They spray blind kinetic arguments into the empty, flooded darkness. Blind kinetic energy is wasted ammunition. It only serves to permanently broadcast their highly vulnerable coordinates. You let them exhaust their initial panic. Absolute discipline heavily outlasts chaotic, uncalculated aggression every time. The mathematical equation is rapidly balanced. 2 silent keystrokes permanently log the hostile variable completely offline. The physical network abruptly disconnects. Their communication line drops into endless, suffocating static and dark water. You aggressively clear the concrete bottleneck. Brute mechanical force violently removes the remaining architectural obstacle entirely. The remaining threat is heavily contained. You forcefully re-enter the open grid. The payload completely secured. The physical scars of survival remain permanent. Steel violently remembers what the biological memory desperately erases. The adrenaline spike rapidly metabolizes. Cold, highly calculated logic forcefully reclaims control of your biological systems. The primary obstacle is successfully bypassed. You forcefully demand the final coordinates to complete the transaction. The silent passenger holds the ultimate leverage. Its contents heavily dictate the shifting balance of underground power. The architect transmits the final vector. The designated sanctuary is heavily buried within a decaying industrial sector. You descend back into the deep subterranean level. The absolute final phase of the violent transition begins. The heavy grid swallows you whole. You move relentlessly toward the final, highly volatile exchange of power. The rendezvous coordinates are physically reached. The heavy transition from transit to stationary target is agonizing. You forcefully step into the designated arena. Trust is heavily replaced by raw, calculated kinetic readiness. The iron gates of the underworld slowly open. The architectural decay heavily mirrors your fractured loyalties. The suffocating atmosphere heavily presses down. The tactical light violently reveals nothing but empty, hostile shadows. The asset is aggressively presented. The physical transaction awaits the unseen buyer in the suffocating darkness. The rival architect finally speaks. The transmission violently shatters the tense, freezing silence of the container. The mathematical equation is brutally inverted. You realize you were never the primary architect of this betrayal. The incoming data stream is highly toxic. The invisible signals forcefully dismantle your entire operational reality. You are brutally trapped between 2 massive biological grinding machines. The illusion of choice permanently evaporates. The mental architecture rapidly collapses. The heavy price of shifting loyalties is entirely paid in sanity. The visual environment aggressively spins. The heavy physical toll of the underground violently overwhelms the senses. The phantom sniper heavily acquires the lock. The auditory hallucination feels entirely solid and deeply lethal. The hardware violently unlocks itself. The mysterious payload is aggressively exposed by an entirely invisible hand. The ultimate leverage is brutally revealed. The physical asset is nothing but a heavily engineered lie. It was a highly volatile tracking beacon all along. You violently transported your own structural failure. The silent countdown aggressively approaches 0. The underground math heavily guarantees a permanent, violent system shutdown. Pure survival instinct forcefully reboots the system. You aggressively attempt to outrun the massive kinetic expansion. The chaotic light violently searches for an exit. The heavy steel box becomes a highly lethal tomb. The extraction vector is permanently blocked. The enemy heavily secured the perimeter while you were distracted. The ultimate trap is heavily sprung. You violently prepare to face the absolute final structural collapse. Physical escape is mathematically impossible. The heavy steel walls guarantee a completely isolated permanent system shutdown. The hostile payload waits patiently. It requires only a single thermal catalyst to violently alter the architecture. The invisible trap physically manifests. A highly volatile puddle of absolute structural destruction violently expands downward. You reclaim complete control over the final variable. The ultimate choice remains solely in your heavily gloved hands. The unseen architect violently offers a deeply poisoned compromise, a false promise heavily disguised as a tactical retreat. The manipulative transmission is permanently silenced. You forcefully reject the deeply flawed operational terms completely. The external noise violently stops. Only the heavily echoing rhythm of your own biological pump remains. The final negotiation requires pure kinetic energy. The impending thermal reaction will violently balance the underground ledger. The heavy darkness is violently fractured. A single spark aggressively redefines the entire hostile operational grid. You stand violently trapped between two massive biological grinding machines. Pure survival requires an entirely unpredictable vector. The cold math dictates a singular, deeply violent path forward. You must aggressively initiate the final sequence. Time violently compresses into a singular microsecond. The final choice leaves absolutely zero room for tactical retreat. You physically release the thermal catalyst. The heavy decision is violently executed without a single backward glance. The volatile payload violently catches fire. The heavy chemical reaction aggressively rapidly expands across the rusted floorboards. The ultimate trap is heavily inverted. You forcefully turn the sealed cage into a massive kinetic weapon. The physical architecture rapidly fails. The impending structural collapse will violently erase all trace of your existence. The pressure violently breaches the absolute limit. The underground world violently witnesses a sudden massive kinetic anomaly. Loyalty in this deeply fractured system is always violently priced by survival. You aggressively chose to burn. The final contract is aggressively fulfilled. The ghost machine violently disconnects from the heavily corrupted underground server. Do you have the tactical discipline to survive the next assignment? Subscribe now to secure your ultimate clearance.